What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, guys, we're doing our tier list for Series 3. Now, I know that everyone loved my Series 2 tier list, so, I'm eager to get into this one. So, let's just start with Smith and Jones, the premiere of Series 3, and in my opinion, the strongest premiere of any Doctor Who series so far. I'm talking about the tier list, not every single series. I mean series 1 to 3. I mean, do I just want to start this video off like with an immediate S tier? Because I feel like this episode is worthy. In fact, fuck it, S tier. Let me just let you in on a little secret, just between us, you know what I mean? I love this series. The leap up in quality from series 2 to 3 is, I think, one of the biggest leaps up in quality in Doctor Who ever. The contenders are 24 to 25. Like, that's a pretty damn big leap. Yeah, I mean, I think those are the two biggest ones. I mean, it's either 24 to 25 or series 2 to series 3, because goddamn, if you compare New Earth to Smith and Jones, it's like night and day. This episode is great. I mean, it's got a great antagonist. It's got a great antagonistic force in the Judoon. They introduce Martha, who's like the best. It's even got that cute bit of time travel at the very beginning where like he takes off his tie and then he comes back at the very end. The opening is great. The middle is great. It moves by at such a fast pace, but like it's so well paced. You know what I mean? Each scene has a purpose. It forms together like a puzzle, which I love when Doctor Who does that. I love when those episodes exist. I think the excuse for the premise of the hospital being on the moon, the Judoon don't have jurisdiction to act on Earth, I think that's just like, it's really well thought out and it justifies its existence, which I think is a big problem, spoiler alert, that some people will have with later episodes, especially some in the Chibnall era, where they feel like they have these big grand concepts, but they don't do enough to justify the big grand concept. I'm going to talk about those Chibnall era series and those Moffat era series because let's be real, I'm talking about both here. Talk about both of them in due time. For now, we're talking about series 3, and I think Smith and Jones sits safely in the S tier, but I feel comfortable at least right now with it in the S tier. Maybe we'll reevaluate the list at the very end, right? Because this is a very complicated series. The Shakespeare Code is next, and I think is it B or is it C? Is it B or is it C? Because instinctively I went to put it in B, but as you guys know, I have rewatched all of these episodes, you know, in preparation for the list, and the Shakespeare Code isn't all that. This is one of those rare episodes where the first act is kind of mediocre and the third act is also kind of mediocre, but the second act is pretty fun. Most of the time, it's usually the first or the final act, which are like the big hitters or the big misses in these episodes, but this is one of those rare ones where like it's a bit weird at the very start, and the very end, like the way they defeat the Carrier Knights is a bit strange. When it hits its stride, it hits its stride, but at the same time, there are some elements which really hold it back. So I'm gonna put it in C. I remembered it being better than it was. This one's done by Gareth Roberts, if I remember correctly, and it's one of his weaker ones. Actually, no, I can't say that. He's got some really trash ones later on, so I guess this would have to be in his top half. But yeah, I kind of want to put it in C. Then after that, we go into Gridlock, which is, I mean, I'm fine putting Gridlock in A. This has a lot really going for it. I'll go over the con really fast. The Macra, they are incredibly wasted in this episode. The Macra are deserving, to be honest, of a full episode, maybe in a future series. That would be incredible. The Macra are just a great villain, and to have them wasted as like these mindless crabs, which they basically amount to in this episode, is a shame. But the episode itself is really compelling. I mean, you've got the stuff below the surface, you've got the stuff above the surface. I feel like this is the episode that gets the face of Bo right. It's crazy how this can be a sequel to such a bad episode and still be so good. I really like the concept of like the never-ending traffic jam. I think it's just very well done. I think this episode is very well done. I feel comfortable putting this one in A tier. And now we're moving into, I feel like, the really complicated part of the series. I feel like the start, like these first 3 episodes, even if I put Shakespeare Code in C, I feel like the start is very solid. I think we can all agree the ending of series 3 is also very solid. But there's this mid portion. I would say there isn't a consensus on the middle section of series 3. And I think Daleks in Manhattan is the epitome of that. I'm just going to put it in B tier for now, but as I talk, I'll discuss my mindset. I mean, this episode is very strange conceptually. It's basically Brotherhood of the Daleks, right? But in New York, and it's got Andrew Garfield in it. It's got Laszlo, which is probably my least favorite part of the episode. Dalek Sec Hybrid is a very bold idea. I'm just going to put both of them in B tier for now. Does this episode pull it off? I can't say. My opinion on this episode changes all the time. Maybe I should do a full video on this two-part. It's probably the weirdest Dalek episode like ever. I think it has a lot really going for it. It looks great. I think the production design is really good here. The pig staves is such a weird thing to have in a Dalek episode, but the makeup is really good. But I still don't really like them. I'm so split on this episode. I think I'm gonna keep both of them in B. As you guys will become aware, I'm a big Dalek fan, and I do think this episode, like, it simultaneously does them dirty and also does them very well, because I feel like them being like this kind of mid-series just regular freak of the week villain kind of undermines them, considering before, you know, they were like massive finale bait. I feel like to general audiences, these two episodes are what kind of it started the downward trend of them being seen more so as like a joke again. And then there was of course the Stolen Earth, but like it was a downward trend after this one where they were taken less and less seriously by the audience, not by the show, by the audience. And so for now, yeah, I'm gonna put them in B tier. I mean, I could talk about these episodes for so long. The Lazarus Experiment. This may be the worst of the series, but I mean, it isn't as bad as I remembered it being. I remember this one being really terrible, but I kind of want to just put it in C. I mean, it has the Jones family. I was gonna say the Martha family. That's not it. The Jones family. It has them, so like it's building all of their characters. But Martha's mum in this series, she's working with the Saxons. Oh yeah, we'll get to the story arc in just a second. I feel like she just isn't very likable at all, which means that her not liking the Doctor, it's very hard for you to not just take the Doctor's side and be like, this bitch. The Lazarus monster, they bit off a bit more than they could chew, sadly. I think the set piece at the very end is all right. I think Mark Gatiss does a pretty good job. I think he's better in this episode than he is in Twice Upon a Time. It's not all that. I've got it in C tier currently. Should I move it down to D? Yes, I'm gonna put it in D. I feel like the Shakespeare Code is a step above the Lazarus Experiment. This is one of those ones which is only saved because it is relevant to the finale. 42 marks the end of these rather forgettable mid-series 3 stories. Not forgettable, rather hit or miss, should I say. And I'm gonna put it in C tier. I feel like this is just like the most 5 out of 10 episode of Doctor Who ever. It's not bad enough to be called bad, and it's not good enough to be called good. It's literally mid. It's got the gimmick of 42 minutes. I mean, B implies above average, and I feel like 42 is average, but I feel like 42 is a better episode than the Shakespeare Code. Like, it's quite thrilling. It's quite a thrilling episode. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it in C, but it's a high C. It's a high C. And yep, that's the end of the baby time episodes. It's time for the big boy episodes. We've got Human Nature. I'm gonna put this one in A tier. Now, a lot of people will put this in S. I'm gonna put the Family of Blood in S, spoiler alert. But I feel like Human Nature is a very, very good episode, but it has like just a few slight cons. A lot of people bring up like the way Martha is treated in these episodes. I feel like that's intentional, so you can't hold it against the episode. But I feel like Human Nature, it just has like just some weird quirks. I can't even necessarily point them out. Feels like I'm really stretching for criticism, but trust me, I'm not. This episode is great. I am not in any way arguing with anyone who would put this episode in S tier. It's just, for me, I feel like part 2 is a step above part 1, or not even a step. A Human Nature is high A, and I feel like Family of Blood is just about S. Like, it just about goes in there. Both of these episodes are really great, but I feel like Family of Blood, it just has that really good ending which wraps it up all together, whereas I feel like Human Nature's ending, I mean, obviously it's a part 1, so you don't get that sense of completion, but it just feels a bit, oh, we've ended the episode now, get ready for part 2. And the resolution to the part 1 cliffhanger is literally Martha gets out of the chokehold. Wow, it really seems like I'm nitpicking here. I like this episode, guys. Family of Blood is great. I already talked about it briefly. I can move on to the next one, which is Blink. Oh, this is the one where everyone's gonna hate me, but I'm putting it in C tier. This is another one done by Mr. Stephen Moffat, and as you guys all know, I think he's an incredible writer. I think it's definitely better than The Girl in the Fireplace. I think there's a lot really going for this episode. I mean, it's worldwide loved. This one like a bath. I think most people would put this one in S tier. I feel like that's the general consensus. I really like the Weeping Angels. Actually, I don't. I take that back. I think the Weeping Angels are a very good creation by Stephen Moffat. I'm not cuckoo crazy for them like some people are. That's like, they're the best Doctor Who villain of all time. They're not, but they are pretty good. Mr. Moffat, I think we can give this to him. I think everyone can agree that he is very good at coming up with original aliens, and I think the Weeping Angel, I feel like the Weeping Angels are very good original aliens. But I think what lets the episode down is the character of Sally and her boyfriend Larry. Those two characters are kind of mediocre. And I guess for just one-offs, they're better than the usual Doctor Who one-offs. The fact is that this episode has been praised so much, but like it really does have a lot of flaws. Now I don't want to point them out to like ruin people's enjoyment of this episode, because if you really enjoy this episode, not only all power to you, but like I hope you keep enjoying this episode. I don't want to ruin anyone's enjoyment of it, but because people have said it's perfect so many times, going into it, you just see all the flaws and all the cracks that much more. So maybe this episode is actually B tier and I'm being mean by putting it in C. The laws of the episode are constantly broken. The transcript at the very end, it just makes no sense. The Weeping Angels aren't threatening when you realize that every single person who gets touched and went back in time has like a really wonderful life, right? Like they go back in time and then they just have a great time. We see mirrors all around the Weeping Angels' house. So what if one of them accidentally looked in the mirror? It's just frozen forever? Whoops, I guess. We see them staring out the window, but surely they would see their own reflection in the window and then cause them to be still for all eternity. In my opinion, Blink is a death by 1,000 cuts type of episode where the baseline is pretty good, and I feel like a lot of people will just overlook all of the flaws, but as a Doctor Who fan who's watched these episodes like 1,000 times each, they really just pop out to me every time I see this one. So yeah, maybe being generous, I'd put it at a B, but I think for now for my tier list, I'm gonna keep Blink at C. It's still a good episode though. I would say it's better than 42 and the Shakespeare Code, which means it's the highest C. And here we are, we're at the finale, Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and The Last of the Time Lords. I'm just gonna cut to the chase and put Utopia in S tier. Conceptually, it's done really well. The crossover with Torchwood, this is probably Captain Jack's best episode. I feel like this episode just has really good scenes back to back to back, and then they all come together. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else. Every single scene individually of this episode is good, and then when you put them together, it's still good. Usually when you watch episodes where there are certain scenes of them that are really good, when you put them together, they like lose the cohesiveness and aren't as good as the sum of their parts. But Utopia is one of them where I would say it is as good as the sum of its parts because it's just a great episode. So the common criticism is that this episode is lessened by the ones that come after it. I couldn't disagree more. I think this episode gets better with the ones that come after it. And I think now we have to talk about it. Derek Jacobi as the Master is incredible for such short screen time he has. Like, he is just popping off. They have this little, it's not even an interaction. They have just this little 1 second scene where the 10th Doctor, he runs in and he sees the Derek Jacobi Master just for a second before he enters the TARDIS. It's just incredible performances from both actors, David Tennant and Derek Jacobi, where they've been talking and communicating in all these scenes together all throughout the episode. But it's only in just this one glance at the very end that they finally recognize each other. And there's that look of recognition where it's just, oh my god, I could talk about it all day. And what a cliffhanger as well. Like, that is a top tier cliffhanger. I would say Utopia is one of those cliffhangers where the soundtrack is incredible. I mean, the reveal of the Master is just so good. I feel like it is kind of obvious if you knew going in, because they literally play the sound clips of the Master, but it still gets me every time, man. The soundtrack is incredible. I feel like the use of flashbacks, this is something that only affects me, but in the Russell T Davies era, whenever they use these flashbacks, it feels so rewarding. It feels like it's saying, you've paid attention to the series, good job, here's the payoff. You know what I mean? Sometimes in other shows I watch, not that there's many, I mainly just watch Doctor Who again and again and again, right? But usually when there's flashbacks, it feels like gratuitous, like, okay, we get it. But in Doctor Who, I don't know what it is. And it's not even just in Doctor Who, it's basically just in this era. When there are flashbacks, man, it hits. And you know what else hits? The Sound of Drums. This episode is another S tier. I don't give a fuck. A lot of people say they really don't like this one, and even more say they don't like The Last of the Time Lords, which, spoiler alert, is also getting put in S. I feel like if you were to compare scene by scene Utopia and The Sound of Drums, they aren't as good. Utopia is better, but I feel like The Sound of Drums, it just has so much going for it. I feel like the Toclafane, everyone talks about the Weeping Angels. The Toclafane are maybe the best original villain. The sound effect, simplicity of the design, the sing-song voices, the Master's introduction of the Toclafane, where the Doctor gets that they're a joke, right? It's like the Master is playing one big prank on humanity and no one gets it apart from him, where these Gallifreyan fairies come down and everyone's looking forward to seeing them come down, but when they do, they just kill everyone. It's incredibly morbid, and it only gets more morbid with The Last of the Time Lords, which I'm also putting putting in S tier. The revelation that the Toclafane are humans from the future, I'm sure that there must have been some people who didn't see it coming, but I feel like this is one of the only twists in Doctor Who which I just didn't even think about, because it's so dark. It's such a dark idea. The fact that there were millions of people who went up in that rocket ship and then they all died, like they were like, oh my god, we're gonna be free, we're gonna go to Utopia, it's gonna be great, guys. And then they all died, and not only did they die, they were then turned into these horrific monsters, which they're basically children. I mean, the crazy thing about it is that technically the Master did take them to Utopia. They were stripped of all individuality and they live in this constant state of joy while slaughtering hundreds of millions of innocent people. I mean, it's incredibly dark, but like it's also very well thought through. In my opinion, the paradox makes complete sense. I'm sure I don't need to explain it to you, but I feel like a lot of people, when they say that the very end where everything gets undone doesn't make sense, I feel like they just weren't paying attention to the episode. I mean, it makes complete sense. Imagine this, right? So there is a paradox, which is that the Toclafane are the humans from the future and they come back and they kill their own ancestors, right? Basically, the future where the Toclafane come from and the current world that they are creating by coming back in time cannot coexist. And the only thing that keeps them from coexisting is the paradox machine, which the Master created. So if you destroy the paradox machine, well, it's like clockwork keeping everything in place. When you take that out of the equation, it severs the connection and it basically rewinds every single thing that happens. I mean, to me, that makes perfect sense. I also think that the Archangel network being, you know, telepathic satellites, I feel like that more than adequately sets up the very end where the Doctor basically charges the spirit bomb, he goes Super Saiyan, and then through the power of strings gets lifted off the ground. I'm very, very happy with these 3 episodes. In fact, they may be the best finale of the Russell T Davies era. I mean, they are just very consistent, and I feel very comfortable putting them all in S tier. Now, there are a few problems, I would say. I feel like John Simm's Master, he's definitely not bad, but he gets better, definitely not in End of Time, but he does get better in The Doctor Fools. I mean, he's one of my favorite actors, but I mean, he has his moments, of course he does. I mean, in The Sound of Drums especially, he is basically great throughout, but in The Last of the Time Lords, he's just not my favorite Master incarnation. He isn't as great as Derek Jacobi, let's say, could be. I mean, I still think it hits home. And as I said, I feel very comfortable putting in S tier. I feel very comfortable saying that this series is A tier. If we look at the average of this tier list, I feel like I feel very comfortable saying that this series is A. I feel very comfortable saying a lot of things, don't I? It's almost like I've spent hours researching and rewatching all these episodes to create the definitive tier list of Doctor Who. Remember to leave a like and subscribe, guys. And anyway, that's going to be the video. As I just said, remember to leave a like and subscribe, except this time I'm not being ironic. And hopefully tomorrow we'll have the tier list for Series 4 uploaded, so can't wait to see your guys' reaction on that. Whatever, see you next time.